Uh, second demo is this semi-additive concept, um, which is kind of a new one for me, I have to admit. Uh, so the the demo here is right. So this idea of semi-additive measures is if you have some attribute in your table that is some kind of running total or some kind of cumulative thing over time that makes sense to add up across everything else except for time. So you say like, so in this case, I've got this fake random data basically that's imagining that users all started out with some balance and then are spending down the balance slowly. And this is a daily table. It's got every day and a user, and it's got their balance at the beginning of the day. And so it makes sense to add up the balance across users, but if you add up the balance across days in a week, you're going to get the wrong answer because you're going to basically add up duplicative, you're going to double count. So show that over here, right? This is just, if I do by month and just sum the balance, these are just, I mean, it's all garbage numbers, it's random data, but these are especially garbage numbers. They're wildly wrong. Like it should always be going down because they started out with a random number. I've just been spending it down. This is fluctuating all over the place. Clearly the wrong answer. So if we go here, we get the right answer with these ending balance sum and starting balance sum measures. And so what are they? They're a sum with a filtered measure that, well, that's weird. I don't know what's going on there, but oh, I hit it. That's a funny bug. Oh, like I hit it since our demo and now it doesn't show up very well here. Oh, well, there's a field here.
If you search for it in the field picker, you can unhide it for this demo's
purpose. Fair. Well, I'm already here now. Oh, here it is. Get rid of these. Don't mind me. All right. So back to that. What are these defined as? So it's this is last date field is true. So it's this filtered measure is last date field is true. Nothing new about that. What's is last date? Nothing. It's just some field last date is equal to the date. That's what I can name this the daily field. So how's that defined? So that has this, which is this funny thing that we just made this up and may not be the final form of this, but it's a special Omni operator that does Omni magic and allows this to work. Because basically what you're saying is, I want to take the max of the date within the grouping, right? So it's grouped by month, and I want to take the max of the date within the month, and which is sensible to do. Like it's easy to think about. It's not complicated, but just in SQL, that doesn't work very well because you're trying to like take an aggregate and then use that aggregate of the max as a filter for another aggregate. So it and the SQL is really crazy because it's already got my crazy random generation stuff in it. But the core thing is that somewhere in here, there's a join that is basically, it takes the query to get the max grouped by month, then joins that value back in and uses it in the main query, wherever it went over here, to basically do the filtered measure. And what's nice about it is because it's all just SQL and it's all part of our relational algebra SQL stack. It basically, I mean, there were a couple tweaks needed, but it works with all the other stuff. Let me make this bigger. So like here it is. so like subtotals are on, right? And we're rolling up by quarter and year, and the balances are what you would expect, like any quarter
Woohoo!
balance, end of year balance. Well, didn't put the actual total on, but the total would be the final balance, and the beginning balance. So yeah, and it pivots to all the right, it all just like folds together. So
What? How did you guys come up with the name Omni Dimensionlize? What does that mean?
so yeah, so that's just is like there's no semi-additive measures in the kind of thing I implemented. It just means basically take some expression that might have aggregate functions in it and go shove it off into another query where I run it in the context the of the main queries grouping, so that you
Yep.
basically have this dynamic grouping that you
So
can, yeah.
does that effectively mean that you could do essentially like on the fly customer facts
Yeah, you can do on-fly
and have
facts
it?
stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So
awesome.
you can essentially create a dimension that's like lifetime spend, and you could essentially make that a dimension on the user. Is that true?
Jamie's probably better able to answer than I. That all
think
Monica was asking these same questions last showed it. All I kept saying is it takes an aggregate and it moves it over and runs it in the grouping and then puts it back. And
It'll
whatever
base
you
the
can figure out.
grouping of the output query, so I think it might do the opposite of what we want on facts potentially. Not sure. We'll have to play with it.
Okay. The naming's definitely a little funky, but
Yeah, well,
obviously the
another
functionality is epic.
a possibility considered is to just forget the Omni operator entirely and basically allow you to define a dimension with some SQL, and you can put aggregate functions in the SQL and then some kind of parameter force dimensionalize or something that basically says like, I want you to take this dimension and do this thing with it. So,
And
This
Stephen, under the
breaks my
hood,
brain, but it's magic and it's super exciting. Thank you.
this isn't doing anything special in terms of the SQL itself. It's just telling us where we're allowed to use it. Is that the right way to think about it?
no, it's doing something special. It's
Oh, it is, okay.
it's forcing this join basically. It's like splitting the query into this part that is in this wrapped in this omni-dimensionalized thing, running it in a second kind of subquery and joining that subquery back in.
Yeah, it's sort of like a virtual view for this one dimension that's being joined back in, given the sort of the state of the first query.
Yeah, the partner who we're considering implementing this for, working with this customer, what they had done was use Looker inquiry to accomplish something similar. Where basically, they had a CTE view in Looker, and they used inquiry to dynamically change the grouping of that CTE and then join it back in. But that's the opposite. It's brittle, complicated. You have to understand inquiry, and doesn't generalize. You have to write in every single thing that you want.
Stephen, if we wanted to, could we take these sort of, or I guess, what is the philosophy on taking these lower level things and putting something on a measure that just says semi-additive over X and essentially does all this behind the scenes?
I would need to, as long as it was simple, there's nothing wrong with it philosophically. It would just need to be simple enough. Like you couldn't just be semi-additive true. Like that doesn't mean you would need to have
No, exactly.
Like,
you'd have to reference it to a field, but then implicitly, like the field would take a max or a min of usually a time field. Grab one of them, because like 99% of the time, these are going to be date, like essentially mins or max over date periods of a subgrouping of that date period. And I feel like if you could just sort of say like daily active users, like whatever is daily, monthly active users, same deal. Like you pick the start or the end, you have a month.
What I think it makes sense to find something ergonomic. So what we might do is just land it even with this omni-dimensionalized thing, because under the hood, that's what it's always going to look like, like in the core. And then like that's the totally unergonomic way to get it. We can play with it, unblock some use cases, and then think about like what's the best way to really bubble it up.
We're like slowly building a DAX language. It's kind of amusing.
I've personally written the SQL to do this exact analysis that you demoed for my previous company, and this would have saved me quite a lot of time. So that's
because the
pretty awesome.
inverse of this is to run it outside the group by. That's actually like that's the lifetime orders type thing. And it's sort of like an ignore group by. So this one is like take a measure and shove it in the group by and dimensionalize it. And the other one is do something before the group by, dimensionalize it, and then do it. But like, it might be worth just sitting down and doing like an hour of looking at all the concepts that exist in DAX, because they've just formed to solve all these types of problems, and just making sure, or like thinking about whether we care about those problems and sort of like what the types of things that we need are. Not because we need them all right now, but they're all created to do this kind of stuff. Exactly.